Thank you, Madam President. I am here this afternoon, or this morning yet, to speak to the issue before the body, the motion to proceed to H.R. 2029, what we refer to as the MilCon VA Appropriations Bill. I certainly intend to support closing off debate on this and moving to take up this important appropriations measure. This is important for a host of different reasons, not the least of which is we need to get to the substance of this, but we need to get to a regular order of process in advancing the appropriations bills that we have spent considerable time and effort to resolving, to working forward over these many months. And making sure that we have that opportunity to do so in a manner that allows us to get to the substance of the bills, rather than to put us in a situation where at the end of this year we scramble to piece together an omnibus measure that has not had the considered debate and opportunity for input that I think we all seek as lawmakers. It's important that we consider the military construction VA bill in regular order and do it now, and not amend it, not stick it on the back end of a measure, not incorporate it into an omnibus bill or some fashion of a CR omnibus right before Christmas. I've been involved in the appropriations process as we have moved it through the various committees. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. I had input into the bill at the subcommittee level and again at markup, which is a lot more than can be said of many of my colleagues in the body who don't have that opportunity, not being on the Appropriations Committee. But even having the input that I have had, it's extraordinarily important that that input be allowed to continue. And let me illustrate why, because I think even for a member of the Appropriations Committee to have had that opportunity for participation, it's so important to be able to speak to an appropriations bill after it has left the markup process. And I'm going to speak to one very specific issue today that has garnered the attention, the concern, and the passion of Alaskans and veterans around the state. And this is the issues surrounding the Veterans Choice Card. In the view of many, many Alaskans, it is an unmitigated disaster in our state, and there are many reasons that this is the case. We don't host a standalone VA hospital in Alaska, and so the VA has issued a choice card to every veteran in the state who is enrolled for health care. But in order to use the choice card, you have to identify a provider who is willing to accept the card, one who qualifies under the very onerous choice card standards, and also one who's willing to put up with the bureaucratic strings that are attached with determining which care is approved by the VA over what period of time and for what price. In Alaska, we have a demand for healthcare providers that far, far outstrips the supply, and I've been on the floor many times speaking to that. We have many Alaskans that have private health insurance, which pays the providers better and certainly more efficient than the government-sponsored programs. Structurally, the way the Veterans Choice Card program is currently designed, it does not provide Alaska's veterans with the choices that it promises. It's just as simple as that. And those are just the structural problems that we're talking about. Many of our colleagues know that Tri-West has encountered difficulties in implementing the program, and the VA has had trouble coordinating Tri-West's work with the work of the local VA facilities. And Unfortunately, it's led to some dangerous near misses. We had one situation with a veteran. He was scheduled for a fee basis neurosurgery, and he was going to receive this care from a community provider in the state, but then he's told by the VA that the VA has changed its mind. They're not going to sign off on paying for the care. So the vet was told, call TriWest. The TriWest call center operator gave the veteran a list of behavioral health providers who had signed up to accept the choice card. The call center didn't know that neurosurgery is not behavioral health. And by the time the VA had reversed itself, the neurosurgery appointment that the veteran had initially had was no longer available. The vet had to wait for one to become available. So what happens to him in the interim? They give him pain meds. Another case, we had a veteran that was sent to Seattle for a course of radiation therapy, and in the middle of this course of radiation therapy, the vet was told to return home because his authorization had expired. Now, he's told, authorization has expired, go home. It's not like he can just get in a car and drive 20 minutes back to his house. He'd been sent to Seattle for the care, for the radiation therapy. Go home, your authorization has expired. So there's a whole series of exchanges with TriWest and then to the VA itself, and the vet began basically calling family members to tell them that he was coming home to die and just start making funeral preparations. This is not how we treat our veterans. Now, the Veterans Choice legislation provided that the Choice Card program does not displace any of the existing VA purchased care programs. It explicitly supplemented those programs, which for us in Alaska would be a good thing. In Alaska, the VA, and this was under Secretary Shinseki's leadership, they established 2 purchase care programs to address gaps in VA capacity in Alaska. And one of the programs provided for partnerships with our tribal health system to care for our vets in our more remote areas of the state where the VA simply doesn't have a presence. And it was innovative. It was innovative at the time, and these partnerships worked. They really did help to facilitate the care. The other program enabled the VA to purchase care from community providers in the state who performed medical services that the VA didn't offer. Services such as neurosurgery and specialized forms of radiation therapy. Before this program was implemented, the VA forced veterans to fly, again, to Seattle or other parts of the country. And again, for services that we would consider pretty routine. You've got a 1,000-mile plus flight to Seattle for an orthopedic appointment or for a urology appointment. This is what we were putting our veterans through. So imagine, you're 70 years old, you're 80 years old, we're telling you, go take a flight, 3.5 hours down to Seattle, get yourself from the airport to the hospital just for an orthopedic appointment. And by the time the veteran is at this place and needs that appointment, they're not feeling real well in the first place. I've talked before, I've written before about a veteran on the Kenai Peninsula who died while fighting with the VA over urology care. He couldn't travel to Anchorage, which is about a 3-hour drive, much less Seattle, where the VA wanted to send him because he was just in very frail condition. But the VA refused to purchase his care on the Kenai Peninsula, where there are facilities there that could have helped him. I think we would all agree that when you have our elderly veterans in perhaps their final months of life, they've got a lot better things to do than just fight with the VA and the bureaucracy. So when the VA came before the hearings in the Appropriations Subcommittee, I asked them point blank. I wanted to know whether implementation of the Veterans Choice Card would adversely affect the existing purchased care programs in Alaska, whether through IHS or for the specialized care? And the answer was clear. There was no nuance, there was no doubt. The answer was no, it's not going to impact negatively the purchased care program. And when the Senate Appropriations Committee marked up the VA MilCon bill on May 21st, the VA hadn't changed its answer. Still, it's not going to negatively impact, they said. Then, a week later, Madam President, on May 28th, I just happened to be visiting the VA facility in Anchorage, and I learned there that the VA had spent all of its FY15 purchase care money and was planning to suspend its relationship with community providers and the Alaska Tribal Health System. I had gone to the VA center to just kind of get an update, to check in with the new docs that were there, see how things are working, and it was just basically a checkup with the folks at VA. And they laid this bombshell, and they weren't trying to be coy with me or hide the ball. They had just learned themselves. I don't know who was in greater shock, me or the folks there at the VA and our military providers. So we were also in a situation where there were a lot of rumors that the VA was going to pull out of the joint venture hospital that it shares with the Air Force on Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. So again, bombshell of news. Now we know that the VA was not just out of purchased care money, it was out of money to operate its health care system, and without the emergency, no debate, infusion of money that we provided from the Choice Act Fund, the VA would have run out of money before we had come back from the August recess. So it was a situation that was a mess. We're unraveling the mess, but it was something that needed to be addressed then, continues to need to be addressed now. So what is the VA's failure to properly project the cost of purchased care mean for its FY16 appropriation? Bringing it back to the issue that we're talking about now. After asking the VA this question on several occasions, I'm left with the impression that the VA will once again run out of money for purchased care and then will remedy this situation by shoving veterans into seeking care under the choice card, whether the care is meaningfully available or not. So we've been pushing the VA on this. And to Secretary McDonald's credit, he came to Alaska this summer. The Undersecretary for Health, Mr. Shulkin, visited Alaska. And they weren't sheltered from the anger that our vets were feeling. My colleague, Senator Sullivan, conducted an incredible field hearing to create a record of how the VA, Tri-West, and the Choice Card program were individually and collectively failing Alaskans' veterans. But here's the problem. We still don't have an FY16 solution locked down, and we may not have an acceptable solution locked down by Veterans Day either. And so without an opportunity to debate the FY16 VA appropriations bill on the floor, I've got limited opportunity to press this point, to demand that the GAO investigate what actually is going on or try to amend the bill to ensure that the VA has adequate purchased care money available so that it doesn't drop these veterans through the cracks when it can't serve their critical care issues, and neither can the Choice Card program. So without the opportunity to debate in regular order, I can't do what the people of Alaska have asked me to do in representing them the way that I know that we need to deal with this. Now, I hear what the Democratic leader is saying, that the Budget Control Act needs to be addressed, but I don't agree with the trade-off that we cannot consider appropriations bills in regular order while conversations are ongoing to address the bigger, broader question. Failing to consider these bills in regular order corrodes the influence of this body. It corrodes the ability of members to fulfill the responsibilities that we have to the people that we work for. So these are issues, again, I chose to focus my comments this morning on one area within the MilCon VA, and that's implementation of the choice card in Alaska and how it has failed our veterans so basically. But there is so much more. But again, if we don't have that opportunity to bring it up, to offer our amendments, to do our best to serve the needs of our veterans, we fail them, we fail a system. So I do hope that we will have the opportunity this afternoon to advance to these important measures. And remember, this is just the first of 12. Very important work that we have in front of us. Madam President, I know that my colleague from Connecticut has arrived to the floor, but before I yield the floor to him, I want to just briefly mention a meeting that I had this morning in my office. I was able to welcome members of the Anchorage Fire Department Honor Guard to my office. They are making their way to Emmitsburg, Maryland, to be part of a ceremony where at the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial, where they pay tribute and honor to firefighters who have given their lives in the line of duty during the year 2013. 3 died, excuse me, and the firefighter that Alaska is recognizing and honoring is a gentleman by the name of Jeff Bayless. And he died at the age of 51 on March 7th of 2014 during a strenuous training exercise in Anchorage. And how Jeff Bayless lived his life as an Alaskan, a fourth-generation Alaskan, and as one who had not only a love for the outdoors, but a love and a care for people is something that, again, we want to pay tribute and we want to honor and recognize him. I have a statement that I would ask be incorporated fully into the record, which details much of the life of Jeff Bayless, much of what he did as just, as he would say, one of the guys who's just doing his job. But as one of those men who was just doing his job, he needs to know that we view him as one of our heroes. And our thoughts and our prayers are with his family and all of his brothers and sisters as firefighters as they gather this weekend in Emmitsburg. With that, Madam President, I yield the floor.